This is Amira. Actually, during undergrad, my school, every year, they really promoted doing some type of summer internship program. And at first, it was like really cool because you're traveling somewhere else. So I was in Jackson, Mississippi at Jackson State, and they sent me the first summer from freshman to sophomore year to Duquesne University in Pittsburgh, which was awesome. Beautiful city, beautiful river, you know. And then the second summer, I went to Santa Barbara in California. And then my third summer, I went to Northwestern in Chicago, which is where I definitely decided, I wanted to be a physician and talk to patients and not to molecules, So it was like this PhD training program. But it was like a great experience. And I didn't know it at that time, but it was padding my resume to make me a really competitive applicant. In order to do those programs, it was relatively easy. It was just like an online application. Submit your CV, do your application, get some letters of recommendation, and boom, you're there, and the experience was paid for. I believe I had to pay for my flight, but they pay for your housing. And there are a ton of opportunities each summer. It was like you can pick to go here, 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 or here. And I believe that it was through NSF or NIH. I can't remember the particular who was funding the initiatives and promoting the initiatives, supporting them at the different colleges, but that's something to look into. So it was fun. It was like free travel, and it was also very educational.
I think for me, I just really went for experiences that I personally believed in. So I became an HIV/AIDS educator counselor with the Red Cross chapter on campus. I think I was parliamentarian or secretary. I don't remember. It's been a couple decades. With the Black Student Alliance, because I just really wanted to make sure that membership organization had a good footing on campus. Then, going to school, yes, Tiffany and I both went to best university in the world, Duke University. Because at the time we were still going to Myrtle, what we call Myrtle Beach, and the state of South Carolina still was flying a Confederate flag. I did a lot of work with the NAACP in order to really protest the Confederate flag in South Carolina and get the Duke student body not to go to Myrtle. But that year we all went to Virginia Beach that year. That was like the biggest thing I've ever done. I convinced the student body not to go to South Carolina. So like for me, it was just like, what do I want to do during my free time? None of that. Okay, the HIV/AIDS counselor, yeah, I mean, you could see that applicable. But the other work was really, what do you get out of other experiences, right? You get leadership, you get collaboration, working in a team, time management. That all took a lot of time, and I was still studying. I was still in my classes, right? I was learning about myself and what I was passionate about. So that was where the brunt of my time went. And then by my senior year, I pledged my sorority. So then, that was where all my world went. But other than that, I just was focused on, like my life. Like, this is my life in college, and this is what I want to do. And this will help me become a physician, because there's skills, again, that are transferable, that it doesn't have to be this typical pre-med science box. I did no research. I did shadow. And again, because I wanted to make sure I was choosing the right field. Not, again, none of this is because you need it to put on an application to apply to school. We can see through that when we're reading through your application. We can see just kind of how cursory your experiences are and everything, if indeed you're just doing it to fill in an application. It's about gaining the experience.
And then we got a couple of questions kind of about how we think about timing of activities. And I think this is something that everyone struggles with in terms of keeping stuff on their CV versus not, and how long we should be doing that. So someone want to kind of share their thoughts on how to approach activities that you might have done at different points in time, and how long you might keep them on your CV or application.
I mean, I think if they're relevant, you can kind of list some of them, but make sure that they have some importance to what you're applying for. So I wouldn't list every single activity. Like at this point, I don't put I was editor for the BSA newspaper. Like that's not really relevant to what I'm doing at this point. But if I did a public health summer fellowship in college, that may have some relevance that I can add. So I would just implore you, I know it seems like a long time frame, but just really think about, is this value added to what the person who's going to read this will learn about me? And is it something that I still feel like is relevant to talk about in an interview? Because everything on that CV is fair game in an interview session.
And I think one thing to add to Dr. Jackson's is if you do something for like an extended period of time too, I mean, it just shows like your commitment to something. So that's more important than having 10 other things listed. If you have 2 things that you basically did for, 3 years, I think that means a lot more than having like 10 to 15 different little projects listed that you only spent 30 minutes doing, basically.
And then Dr. Matthews, you want to kind of address the question about kind of some of those high school trips that people might have done and how you balance those pieces?
Yeah, that's a really good question in the Q&A. I think that this leads to the same question that Dr. Jackson and Dr. Terrell just answered about kind of timing, right? So if you've gone kind of the back-to-back path, right, and you're in college and there's something, again, I think that's applicable, that someone reading the application can learn about you from one of those high school trips, then I think it's helpful. I think it's worth then maybe describing part of that in your personal statement, that you worked on some public health project or you helped in a community or something. If it was just more of a general mission, maybe not healthcare related, it can still even show your passion to help others. So I do think, if again, you're pretty close in time frame to high school, or at least the trip, then I think it's worth listing. If it's more than like 10, 15 years out, and honestly, you haven't really shown that same sort of effort since then, like say you're applying as an older student, then mentioning that you did something 10 years ago actually doesn't help your case at all, because it doesn't necessarily show that you've been interested in this field over time, or have you done any other mission work? Have you done any other clinical experience? You only did that back in high school. I don't know what that means, when I'm reading that application. So again, the concept is to show your longer term interest. But I'm not saying it needs to be permanent interest either. We all had classmates that chose to do medicine late in their career, right? So it's not about that, but it's about, if you're going to mention it from high school, it better draw a line from high school to now, as opposed to being this, just really sporadic display of experiences that really don't speak to either your character or your abilities.